All right. Good morning, everybody. This is the Senate Transportation Committee, and it is Friday, the 28th, and next week will be February already, and the month just flew by. So we'll continue our discussions this morning on some first item we have this morning, the State Highway Safety Office budget. And we have a number of folks with us this morning, and who would like to lead off?
I'll lead off, Mr. Chairman. My name is Todd Sears. I'm the Deputy Bureau Director for the Operations and Safety Bureau. And I'd like to introduce the team. We have our SHSO, our administrator, our program administrator, Allison LaFlamme, who will take lead on the briefing itself. And we are also joined by Mr. Bill Jenkins, Mr. Paul White, who are our law enforcement liaisons. And that's the four of us. And with that, I can turn it over to Allison to begin the briefing, the packet of which you should have.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And we'll do that. Allison, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Morning.
Thank you for having us. Like Todd said, my name is Allison LaFlamme, and I am the administrator of the Highway Safety Office. I'm going to share my screen here, if that's okay.
Sure, go right ahead.
Talk about our budget for federal fiscal year 22. Let's see here. Can you see that?
Yeah, it's up there.
All right, great. So if you need a copy of it, I know you have it through your systems, but we included a link here on the front page of our presentation. So this is the Highway Safety Office is funded by NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, through formula grants each year. And we work on behavioral change for highway safety, traffic issues, concentrating most seriously on fatalities and serious bodily injury crashes. But we do have a variety of performance measures and goals that we write in a highway safety plan each July 1st. That's submitted by that date. And then in August, mid-August, NHTSA is required to let us know if they agree with us about all the projects that we have listed within that plan. So this document, and I can scroll out as needed, is what we call the Highway Safety Program Cost Summary. And this is a roll-up of all of our projects for estimated dollars, and we're still working on estimated numbers here on our highway safety plan because we have not received our award letter for our section 402 funds, which is kind of like our general highway safety federal funds. That's this section right up here. We are still waiting on that number because the FAST Act authorizations have not all come through yet. And so we haven't received from NHTSA our final number. So this document that we submit with our highway safety plan outlines all of the projects, and at that time it's just an estimate for all of our fund sources, because we find out if we're approved in August, but we don't find out our award letters. They start trickling in by fund source in October, November, and currently we're still waiting on one. So we true up the numbers throughout the year, but we do use 3-year averages and look at past funding. And like I said, it's based on formulas and VMT. So we use our best projections, the tools that we have to come up with this budget that we submitted this one back on 7/1/2021.
Is this a national program? Every state has this program? Correct,
and the territories too. Yes.
Okay, and so we come up with areas that we think we need to make improvements and suggest different areas and things that we should be doing. Is that? Yeah.
So we review. We work very closely with Mandy White in the data unit on specific performance measures that some of them NHTSA asked of us, and others that we create internally based on our review of crash data.
Because everybody notices, not think everybody, but there's been a speeding epidemic out there. It seems like speeding is the thing these days. And so you look at those figures of speeds and you try to correct that. And that's what you work on, things like that.
We do. In our law enforcement grants, that's part of the scope of work is speed enforcement, as
Okay.
well as I'll have Paul White talk a little bit about
Okay,
he's
that's right.
on the
Yep,
traffic
right ahead.
committee.
Yep.
Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly where to go with that. A large part of our programs is funding to law enforcement agencies for supplemental work that, above and beyond what they're able to do on their own local budgets. And, not every police department in the state applies for grants, but many do. Most of the sheriff's departments do. And a large part of what they do is speed enforcement. Now, granted, our grants fall into different categories, which Allison will get into, either seatbelts or impaired driving or distracted driving. But regardless of which one of those grants they're working on, speed enforcement is a large part of what they do. If you're looking for seatbelt violations, obviously you can't stop them just for that. So speeding is quite often what they will stop the car for. And so
Okay.
we don't have any programs directed specifically at speeding, but speed is a component of all of the grant programs that we run.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I was clicking on the wrong button there to unmute. So here is our budget we turned in back, like I said, on July 1st of 2021 for the projects that began on 10/1. So this budget is currently in process. We had a $7.8 million budget, and it includes any 164 funds, which are the federal highway transfer funds for the alcohol enforcement projects. And then we have our 405C roll up for the different areas. And this one, it's a little onerous and hard to, there's definitely very strict rules with all NHTSA programs, but with these particular programs, they really focus on one subject area. So we have our B, C, D, F, and E, which are the areas that we qualified for based on our state laws. And sometimes it's a calculation done by NHTSA as well to see if we qualify for some of their funding, as an example of, and we review the statutes, and we look at all the certs and assurances each year that NHTSA provides to us to see what the state qualifies for. So here is a graph just showing the past 6 years of highway safety plan budgets that we have submitted. We didn't have as much carry forward in fiscal year 19. We don't budget for carry forward, but because in a moment I'll show you the carry forward, we didn't have as much. We definitely went a lot more conservative in fiscal year 20, as well as, like I mentioned last year, the 405E money, the comprehensive distracted driving money that you all helped pass minimum fines on junior operators. We didn't know at the time when we submitted fiscal year 20 that we were going to receive over $2.5 million in that fund. So, and that has ranged every year since 20 from 2.5 million up to 3 million, but it's incredibly restrictive in how we spend it. So we had a conservative budget, and we ended up adjusting our budget through amendments like we do every year to adjust our carry forward. But these are the budgets for the new funding. And this year, like I mentioned, we have that $7.8 million budget that we submitted. And so here is our carry forward funding. So we close out September 30th each year. All of our projects for our grants end. So we do have some multi-year contracts, but all of our grant agreements end on a yearly basis. And if you look at the bottom of this document, you see all the itemized grant agreements that were rolled up into the top number that I showed you in that 217 report. And so we reissue grants, and then we have an amendment process to program these carry forward funds. And then we look internally at projects that we can use this funding for. So we have 4 years to expend each year that we get our money. We get new money every year. We have 4 years to spend it. So we do have the largest carry forward we've had in some time, $8.1 million that we just closed out on in December at the end of it. And so right now we're in the middle of programming that funding. And NHTSA has gotten very strict. They had an audit in Washington, D.C., where they looked at states' highway safety plans and they said, if the state is not making a goal in any certain area in their highway safety plan, that they need to do something different that's data-driven, either a new project or come up with within a project something new to try to meet the goal that they had originally set in the next highway safety plan. So we have areas that we will be working on because we just submitted an annual report as well on December 31st. That has not been finalized. It's currently being worked on. Between NHTSA has reviewed it and they have given it back to us, and we have to make some updates and changes to that. That should get finalized in the next 2 weeks. So we are in the middle of programming that $8.1 million, and a share of it will go towards more Drive Well Vermont is my hope. I'll be working with the VTrans PIO to see about adding more PSAs to that program as an example.
Any questions from any of the members? Just jump in if you have a question. Yes, Senator Chittenden.
So this is helpful, and I'm sorry I stepped away for 2 minutes. I have something distracting me. I don't know if you spoke to this, but do you have any overlay of actual observed traffic incidents? We had an earlier presentation showing us the number of deaths on the roadways, and those have been going up this year. I'd love to overlay our spending and our budget and our commitment to different programs with what we're actually observing on the roads to see if there's any reason that we should shift or focus dollars in certain promotional awareness campaigns or so on. Am I making sense with what I'm asking?
You are, and I don't have that in this presentation. This is just focused on NHTSA fund sources, but we certainly could work with the data unit, which is under Mandy White, to overlay. We also have a strategic highway safety plan. And Todd, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I'll be happy to. And it sort of addresses the chair's question about the kinds of things that we look at generally with this kind of funding. And a good way to think about how we look at safety, at least the way that I do it, is in two kind of buckets. So one of those buckets are engineering, kind of on the ground engineering interventions that can make our roads safer. These could be rumble strips, these could be fixing intersections, these could be improved signalings, those kinds of things, kind of hardware on the ground. And then the other bucket has to do with enforcement and education primarily. And what this program deals with is enforcement and education, largely those pieces. And to give you a sense of the kinds of areas, we call them critical emphasis areas, that we look at in our grand 5-year plan, they are things like lane departure, intersections, and these are specific focus areas, speed and aggressive driving center, which is what you brought up earlier, occupant protection, impaired driving, distracted driving and alertness, pedestrians, bicyclists, motorcyclists, and then younger drivers and more mature drivers. So those are the emphasis areas that we look at. And we do have, to Senator Chittenden's a question, we do have data around each of these emphasis areas that we could provide.
Yes, go right ahead, Senator.
So I'd love to see that. So these critical emphasis areas, I like that term a lot. So overlaying our spending in those areas with what we're observing would be insightful to me, at least as one other perspective to help inform budgetary priorities.
Yes, sir. And
yeah,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. That's right.
Yes.
Following that question, I think it'd be nice to know, like, say we think there's a lot of excess speeding out there. How would you address that? Would you have a suggestion that fines go up, or there would be more signs that flashing on the highways, or how would you react towards more speeding in areas that they aren't abiding by speed limits? That's, I don't know if that's correctly stated, but that's.
Right. So that there's an emphasis area, there's an issue there, and then there are multiple strategies that we can adopt to address those. So when you're dealing, and I'd probably defer to our law enforcement liaisons to speak more articulately about this, but when you're dealing with just say speeding or speeding alone, one way to do that is increase fines. Another way to do that might be to increase the enforcement footprint on the ground. So there are different strategies to address each of those to hopefully, right, to change, to move the dial in the right direction. That's the idea.
Okay. Thank you.
Sir. Yes, sir.
And one thing that our office is actively working with the data unit, we are working on dashboards, and we know that data and linkage to problems, we want to beef up that area. So we are working on that internally. So here are our expenditures for the federal fiscal year 21. Keep in mind 22, we don't have them yet as they're just beginning to voucher with us, our partners. So in 2021, we were like every state. I was talking to the NHTSA regional program manager for Vermont and out of Cambridge, Massachusetts just the other day. And I asked her, I said, I'm assuming that we're probably following the trends that every state is, and she did confirm that there were struggles. The past 2 years, there have been struggles with every state and territory on spending pretty much across the board. And it can directly be attributed to the pandemic, of course. But we are finding ways. Our partners are finding safe ways to either meet in person or virtually. They're still running programs. I'm really proud of the outstanding work that they have been doing. And we did expend $4.3 million, just shy of that, when we closed out on December 31st last month. So it's slightly down from our high in 2017 of 6.5 million, but we're catching back up, and I'm confident that we will be able to be good stewards of the money and use it appropriately and spend it effectively as we age this money to make sure that it's being tracked. And then,
Yes, Senator Berkeley.
Yeah, thank you. Which division is the State Highway Safety Office in? If I'm looking at the budget book, where would I find it? Under what? Is it under one of those divisions?
It is under the PDD appropriation under operations and safety, I believe it is, and it's and I'm not sure, Senator, exactly what the hard copy is that you're looking at, but it would be a line item on page 10, and it's labeled. Let me take a look. Yeah, it's under agency.
On the table of contents that were on budget reports, I just wondered if within one of those divisions, it's under program or is it under planning and policy? Or
no, it is in our capital program. It is under I'm clicking, excuse me. It's under program development, and within that, and I'm not sure what you're looking at, what that table of contents looks like, but it's under program development and then safety and traffic operations under that. And within that, there's a matrix of projects. One of those is this, and it's labeled GHSA.
okay, thank you. And then another question is, does the safety office deal with design? Like, are you working with others in AOT on things like roundabouts that reduce fatalities, or other road or intersection designs that would help? Crosswalk, ways to reduce pedestrian fatalities, things like that. Are you working on the front end so that things are designed better so we have less fatalities?
You want me to take that one, Allison? Okay, Senator, yes, we are. But just to focus here on this particular piece of the budget, which is the NHTSA piece, right? That is largely behavioral. So the programs that Allison is describing, these are largely enforcement, education, outreach, some EMS support, kind of this, I don't want to say soft, but it's not the engineering part that you're talking about. But the answer is yes, we do have you know, a kind of a wide ranging cross bureau kind of protocol for engineering safety interventions, which go to roundabouts, which go, you know, alternative intersections, which go to different signaling schemes, which go to roadway design itself. So as I said, rumble strips and safety edge and those more kind of systemic interventions that can happen. But that doesn't happen. That's not within this program. It happens in another program, but it's not this one. This one is largely behavioral.
You know, one more on the behavioral, and I think we've talked about this in past years. It does either on the national level or in Vermont or in other states talk about the level for blood alcohol content, which is considered a safe amount to be driving?
So I would have to get the agency's position on that particular stance. It's something that, yes, every state, the Governor's Highway Safety Association has every state law posted, which I'm a member of, posted on their website. And so I believe, I'd have to double check, but I think Utah is the only state that has that particular, the 0.05. And the majority of other states have 0.08. Paul or Bill, do you have any other information that you'd like to share on that?
That's correct. Utah is still the only state that has lowered to 0.05.
And do we? I don't think that's been pretty recent. Is there, like, if you go to these national conferences, does Utah present on their data? Are they seeing a change?
So we did ask Utah for some data. I believe it was last year, and that they said it was so early. Traffic data lags significantly. So they did not have any that I believe that they said that they were comfortable to share. And I think Bill reached out, Jenkins. Bill, do you have any more information on that you recall?
Probably
Off the top of my head, you know, they had some very preliminary data. I'd have to look back in what they sent me to give you specifics. But like Allison said, it was kind of an off year. So I believe they passed it 2 years ago. And, you know, of course, the first year went right into the pandemic. So their data was really kind of skewed. And so they really wanted to go another year. You know, I'm not sure we call it normal yet, but to get more traffic flow, to get a better idea of how it's working out. They did say that, you know, there was a lot of, you know, for lack of a better term, angst, you know, from like business owners and things like that. But that in the end, it didn't seem to really, like, once it was implemented, it didn't seem to really bother people too much. It seemed to be somewhat seamless as far as, you know, how I guess it really overall, it didn't seem to change a lot of the enforcement. I mean, they were still arresting people who were impaired, and it didn't seem to like cause really any big ripples or anything like that. But as far as the numbers, like I said, they were kind of preliminary. And like I said, I'd have to look back to see exactly what they had sent me.
Yeah, over the time, it'd be interesting to see if they see a difference. And I know Quebec changed theirs to 0.05 10 years ago. And I don't know if we've ever seen data from them, because they moved from a 0.08 to 0.05, I think. And so it'd be interesting to see what data Canada has seen.
And I believe a lot of Europe has 0.05.
Yeah, Australia, Japan, a lot of places have moved to 0.05. Okay, thank you.
Here are the funding award amounts from NHTSA. So this was after we applied and the amounts that we received. And you can see that big jump from 19 to 20 when we started to receive that 405E comprehensive distracted driving funding. So back in 2017, we received just over $4 million. And now we're projecting, like I mentioned earlier, $7.8 million for this year. And then the last graph that I have, I believe, to share, with you is the carry forward plus new funds. We'll be revising our budget through the amendments process that we originally submitted back on 7/1. So we will have a $15.1 million budget that we will have for fiscal year 22. Some projects, just to quickly mention them, that we are looking into are supplementing and expanding mature driver programs, as well as younger driver programs. Like I mentioned, more media within the Drive Well Vermont umbrella. Had a lot of success with the 3 different PSAs that we've put out in the social media stills. Looking at motorcycle safety, what else can we do for bike and pedestrian safety, all across the board in every area, child passenger safety, and impaired driving, of course. So we will be applying the money in the different fund source areas. They have to stay in the way they came in, they have to stay in that same area, funding source area, and we will be applying those over the next few weeks to a month. And then at the bottom of this document are just all of the projects that roll up into that original 217, in case you had any questions. And we also wanted to have a transparent document that you could see what made up those numbers.
And you say that police departments and sheriff's departments can apply for this money for their local areas? That
correct?
Okay.
So every spring we put out through our entire listserv, and we share a funding opportunity notice that's written in accordance with the federal rules, and they apply through our grant electronic system, and that we review them as a grant review committee, and then they typically get, if they are approved, which the majority of our law enforcement programs get approved, then they receive usually an occupant protection 402 grant, which like Paul said, in every one of these grants, if they have a stop that's outside of the data-driven enforcement that they went out to do, they can still complete that stop, traffic safety stop. So they receive a 402 grant, they receive an impaired driving grant, and they also receive a distracted driving grant if they apply for them.
Why would they not apply? Why would they not apply? Because they have to use that money specifically for what it's intended. I look up here. I don't see Colchester. Not that, so they would not, because they don't see any reason to use it for that specific cause, or?
Do you want me to take that, Alice?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Senator, historically, every police department that wanted to participate in our grant programs would apply for their own grants.
Okay.
So we handed out, 50, 60, 70 small grants to all the different police and sheriff's departments. Starting in Chittenden County, we started, probably 15 years ago. It started with Shelburne, South Burlington, and Heinsberg, I think, got together and joined for one grant between the 3 of them, rather than each one applying for their own.
I see.
And they pooled their funds.
Okay.
And then that started out as that Tri-Town grant, and over years that just grew and grew and grew to the point where every department in Chittenden County now applies for one grant. It used to be the Shelburne Police Department that spearheaded it, Lieutenant Al Fortin, who you may know.
Yeah.
And then he retired from Shelburne, went to work for Sheriff McLaughlin at the Chittenden County Sheriff's Department. And so now the Sheriff's Department holds the grant for all of Chittenden County. And so we give the Sheriff's Department a large grant, and they sub-grant out to Colchester, Essex.
Oh, I see. Okay. No.
So they do have grants. They don't get it directly from us. We grant to the Sheriff's Department. And this multi-agency countywide arrangement that I just talked about, we have that in Chittenden County, which now has also expanded into Franklin. Chittenden County now provides grant funding to Franklin County agencies, St. Albans, Swanton, and the Sheriff's Department. And we have a similar arrangement in Rutland County, in Addison County, and in Windham County.
They do that because it's easier to, one source does all the paperwork of the request, and then they distribute it, of course, how they want it, or?
Well, it's a variety of reasons. It makes it easier for us, frankly, because we have to deal with one grant manager instead of 15. But also for them, because it's one sort of umbrella grant, they have the Lieutenant Fortin in Chittenden County has the flexibility to move that money around. You know, if maybe right now Essex is maybe short-staffed and not able to work their hours, but yet Milton has a documented traffic safety problem and needs extra money, he can move that money from Essex to Milton. And if next, a couple months from now, Colchester has a problem with people passing school buses or whatever, and they don't have quite enough money to cover it, he can shift money from Shelburne to Colchester. And it gives a lot more flexibility to be able to move that money around within the county.
Thank you. Any questions?
Senator Mazza?
Yes, I can't see. Okay, go right ahead. I can't see you. Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, I was just going to correct myself because I just looked it up that Quebec was going to switch it to 0.05, but they got pushback from the restaurants. And so they just moved it to 0.5 for certain drivers. So it's still 0.08 in Quebec for regular people.
Okay. Any other questions?
Senator, if I could just wrap
Yes.
up, I just want to make sure that I got the proper takeaways here so that we can support you with what you need. I got two, primarily one of them, Senator Chittenden, interested in the critical emphasis areas and the data sets that support those as one. And then Senator Perchlik still interested, as I understand, sir, on impact 0.05 BAC change on fatal and serious injury data in Utah. Is that correct?
Yeah, if you happen to have it, but that's something else you can report next year if I'm still here.
Understood.
Not.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much. Good overview. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Okay, committee, we're going to move on. Our next item on the agenda is Department of Motor Vehicles budget. Wanda Manoli is with us this morning, I believe, and Terry Blaisdell. Good morning, Wanda. Are you with us?
Good morning. We are. Can you see us?
It's Friday.
I'm just,
Not
yeah,
yet.
because our screen's showing the previous presentation.
Yep,
So
right,
I just wanted to make sure.
It's Friday, Wanda. We won't be bothering you tomorrow or Sunday.
Oh, well, thank you. That's wonderful. I'll
There you
help
go.
my dad celebrate his 87th birthday tomorrow.
All
Thank you for
right.
the day off.
All right. Folks.
Good morning, committee. For the record, Wanda Manoli, Commissioner of DMV. And with me, I have Terry Blaisdell, who's our Director of Finance. And we're here to do an overview of the DMV's FY23 budget.
All right.
So when you are ready, if you're ready, we'll ask
We're all
Jordan's going to
We're all set. Ready to go.
Jeannie, put up the PowerPoint budget slide. That would be wonderful.
I know you got
Thank
extra
you.
money you don't need, so I'm sure we'll give it back to us. Go.
What was that, Terry?
Always.
Always, yes, lots of money. Yesterday I had an opportunity to do an overview of the department. So there is some duplication in this presentation, and with permission from the committee, I'm not going to go through all, similar items. Our PowerPoint presentation is set up to answer specific questions that we received from the Appropriations Committee on the House side. So you may see me just ask Jordan to pass a slide, and we'll get to the important component of this, which is the overall budget. In addition, the secretary did a presentation, and he's identified before the committee some of the changes coming from DMV. So the next slide, please, Jordan.
On the Senate side, we have the honor of having the chair of appropriations, so she just rubber stamps everything for us.
That's
well,
wonderful.
Oh, here it comes.
Well, normally, I might rubber stamp. I don't know. The one thing that we do have out here, which came out from our discussion with the towing industry is that $40 being increased. And so obviously that's not reflected in your budget, but it's something we need to get a price tag on.
Yes, and Deputy Commissioner Smith did brief me on that testimony, and we are working on that, and we don't have a response or the details today for that, but Terry is just looking at that.
Yeah, I'm sure, and it's not, we're not that far. We haven't even started really the 23 budget, so you got time, don't worry.
So to the members of the committee, we talked about our divisions yesterday when we did the overview, and part of our budget presentation, we identified performance measures by calendar year. And so these are the measures that we've identified for the operations division, and some specifics. We continue to measure average wait time. And I'm not going to read these to you, but this is really broken down by customer service time, number of exams, applications, suspension, and our IFTA IRP, which is the largest portion of money that we bring in that unit, and how many registrations that we processed. Next slide. This is the DMV Enforcement and Safety Division and the performance measures by calendar year. I'd like to offer to the committee, I don't believe you spent much time with Director Fakos, and he's been with us over about 1.5 years now. In August, it will actually be 2 years. Tony really established some goals and expectations coming into his unit, and he's been very successful. And as a department, we've supported some of the changes in the needs that unit has wanted for quite a while. And I think there would be a great opportunity, if the committee is open to it, to have Director Fakos come in and talk about his measures and some of the accomplishments and what they are actually doing on the commercial side, especially on roadside, in our educational unit, which I think a lot of people, even though we do talk about it, just having a better awareness of what DMV's responsibility is on that side, and then our investigative side. So it is something that I think would be really beneficial if the committee is interested in that.
Yeah, just the committee, Wanda and I had talked about this, and I thought it would be a good overview to get an update. I know they play an important role, and I think Tony would be well received to listen to some of the things that they do and what they accomplish with all the inspections and trucking issues and things. So, yeah, I think we'll put on the agenda. Sure. Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Next slide. We talked yesterday briefly about our special programs division, and this is, where we're always, this is where we change our forms, our website, do our translations. And I know I brought this up yesterday, and I just want to point out, translated forms and how we communicate with, all of the residents of Vermont and our customers. Is, increasing in multiple different languages. And with the change I had talked about yesterday in just putting up front the ability to use the Google Translator and to access forms and directions in their language of choice, we increased and 350%, but it was about 300 in 2020 to 1,300 this year. And we do see that service increasing rather quickly. And we are focused on, again, how do we just keep making available our services to all users.
That's a nice looking building in Newport. Nice. It looks, what is that, a building that's used by other folks or just DMV or?
No, that is a state-owned facility. I think it's still a state-owned facility in Newport. And it's a condominium association, and I only know that from days of old. There's a bank in there, and I think community college and some other small
Oh.
private businesses, and DMV is located in that space.
Nice looking building. Senator
It is
Ingalls?
a nice building. It is
Yeah.
a nice building.
Okay.
Next slide, please. And then the DMV Finance and Logistics Division, and Terry's here. Again, these are some of her performance, measures, as well as just a focus on what the team does. And I think what's really important, and this is really where the core system, the first phase of the core system that comes in, is really going to change how we categorize funding, which all of you are aware that every transaction that comes in, we must categorize it to the appropriate fee item that is outlined in statute. And this is the team that is responsible for that, plus many other things. So let's go to the next slide. And at this time, I'm going to turn the budget presentation over to Terry. So
Thank you.
go
Thank you.
ahead, Terry. You may want to come over here a little bit.
Sure.
There you go.
Good morning. For the
Morning,
record,
Terry.
Terry Blaisdell, Director of Finance for DMV. So we like to give you a snapshot of where we're at for fiscal year 22. This is halfway through the year as of December 31st. And if you just look at the very bottom, you'll see we're only 44% spent for the year. Normally at the end of December, you'd like to be 50% because it's halfway through the year. We are catching up. We are technically right on target. We have a lot of invoices that we pay once a year that haven't come in yet upon further analysis. And then we also have some contract expenses that are a little bit behind. You'll see the third line down. Contract and third parties are only paid at 37%. So that's a really big line item for us. So we'll be catching up on that one as well. And then you will see 9% spent on the fifth line down. That's for telephone, primarily telephone. And we just received phone bills for the first 4 months of the fiscal year. So we'll be catching up on that as well. So I have no concerns that we are right on target. So,
Sorry.
sorry about that. Yes. So are there any questions about our FY22 spending?
No, I don't see any. Okay.
Next slide.
Okay, so this slide is really just a picture of a pie chart picture of where our funding sources are coming in for fiscal year 23. So based on the latest economic review and revenue forecast update that was just released earlier this month, we are on target to get $368.3 million in fiscal year 23. And this is just really a nice chart of how that revenue is classified, if you will.
If I was to do a comparison of a gasoline tax a year ago, where would we be?
Oh boy.
I'll look that up while
Okay.
I'll look
Sorry.
up at last
Yeah.
year's.
That's
Yeah.
all right. Just curious without the people driving to work and other things that were
Yeah,
happening. Just curious. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
Yes, Senator
That's
Chittenden.
for you.
So on a similar vein to that, Senator Mazza, a theme of questions that I've asked over the last couple of weeks. I heard from Senator Perchlik, we used to have a fee bill that we haven't had in the 3 or 4 years. I would be interested to know that motor vehicle fees licensing, how that 90 million compares to the last 10 or 20 years. And not that I'm worried that we're not collecting enough money, but as we look to the gas tax gradually declining as we electrify, I'm interested to make sure that we are in fact covering our bases by keeping our fees through DMV car registration.
That's a good point. We ought to at least look at them, even if we don't do anything. We should look at them and see where. I know there was a question a few years ago. In fact, I brought it on up when you looked at motorhomes. The registration fee was so low in comparison to other vehicles, but that was just one item. But even if we don't raise them, we ought to look at it and see how they look. Good, thank you. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I can definitely take that back and do a little bit of analysis.
Sure, that would be
I
helpful.
can't promise to get 20 years worth of data. I don't know how many,
that's fine.
but I can go back, a few years for sure and
Sure.
get you some analysis on that. Sure, I'm happy to do that. Are there any other questions on this slide before we move forward?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yep, go right ahead, Senator Perkman.
The split of the purchase and use tax, can you remind me what that is? Like,
So that's the split between the transportation fund and the education fund. I believe it's a third goes to the education fund. Third of all purchase and use tax collected.
I guess
Yes,
that
one more.
would make sense by the numbers that.
One more question.
Yep, go right ahead, Senator Chindy.
So I think I've heard, or at least I Googled, that Vermont has about 229,000 vehicles that get registered every year, and those registrations are like $100 or so. I'd love to confirm that, and I as a homework item, but I'd love if you have thoughts or can direct me somewhere, would like to know how that compares to other states. For example, public transit, I see a real synergy with having a public transit fee on a car registration amount. And if there are 229,000 cars that register a year, move the decimal place, there's $2 million that could help support our public transportation systems throughout the state. So that's an interest area I have, and that I'd love to know if other states are doing something similar, because it makes sense. Those that choose to buy a car and register a car should subsidize those choosing to take the bus. At least that's my perspective.
But just remember, what you run into there is that public transit is not available to everybody in Vermont.
But you can carpool. So.
We saw a public transit thing one time up in, but then we figured it was Sasquatch instead. So,
but there's park and rides. So if you live out in further out,
there's Senator Chinden. We don't have park and rides in our area. We have one in Orleans County, I think, and yeah. So we don't have.
It's a thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't have a public transit up here.
Last thing, just, you could have it only apply if you're in an area that is served by public transit. So in the more rural areas, you wouldn't trigger that fee. But if you register your car in like Colchester or some other area that doesn't pay for municipal infrastructure, then you could hit them with that $10 fee.
Yeah, Wanda would love that. Okay, go right ahead.
If there's no other questions on this slide, then we can move to the next.
Okay, so this is the overview of what we're looking at for our FY23 proposed budget. As you all know, DMV has what's called a maintenance budget. 2/3 of our budget is personal services, which is made up of our salaries, our fringe benefits for employees, and our contract services. And then about 30% of our budget is operating costs. And it's really, like I said, a maintenance budget to do business. So we do have it's a 10% increase, which is larger than past increases that we have brought forward. Of that 10%, you'll see there's a pretty equal 10% increase in personal services and a 10% increase in operating costs. A high-level overview of personal services is we do have a $1.5 million increase in salary and benefits. That is really contractual. A lot of that is contractual increases that are beyond our control, as well as the fringe benefits. But included in that, we have budgeted $500,000 for the class review. So we have 99 positions at DMV that were just part of a class review that we did this fall. I think there were eight different classes. Am I correct? Throughout the department that were looked at and were upgraded. We also have added in $395,000 for 5 limited service positions. It's really important for us to have those positions to backfill our subject matter experts that will be going on the project for the core system upgrade, so that we can send our best employees, our most knowledgeable employees, to that project and still do the same work that we have to do today with those positions that we've identified. For contractual services, we do have a $645,000 net increase in contractual services. In FY23, we're really looking to maintain our existing contracts. Our implementation costs are very, very minimal. We've done a lot of the heavy work. Our contracts are in place, and this is just moving on in the maintenance and operation of those contracts. The exception for this year is we have added in a contract. This was not proposed in our budget last year, but we have added in a contract with a vendor to do a call service for us to make appointments to schedule. I'm sure that maybe some of you have heard about the scheduler that DMV has put in place. The public is now able and quote unquote required to have an appointment to come to a DMV office. And that is a contract that helps us make that happen.
So just to add, we did do an overview of this yesterday, and I had shared with the committee that in the beginning, when we had to reopen up DMV, we had an opportunity to temporarily partner with the Department of Labor and use their call center in order to manage the customer service time, to make sure we're available, because not everyone has access to scheduling their appointments online. We went out to bid and did our own separate contract for someone to answer the phone specifically to schedule appointments for individuals that need assistance in making that happen, that don't walk into a branch office. And that's what Terry's referencing. You're welcome.
And then moving down to operating costs, again, a 10% increase, which equates to a net increase of 1.1 million. With the online services, a lot of customers doing their needs online, we are seeing an increase in postage costs as well as bank service charges. The bank service charges is a substantial increase this year, but as we push more and more people to the internet to renew these services online, that is the cost of doing business. We have a $300,000 increase in internal services. So this represents our fee for space through BGS, our ADS charges, our charges to use the finance and management accounting system, to use the HR services, workers' comp, risk management, etc. And then we are seeing a $200,000 increase in printing costs for plates and registration stickers. I have done a little bit of digging into this line item in particular, and we are seeing a little more in printing of the plates, but another reason this is so high is this was a cost that was allocated to printing. And I started moving some of this over a year ago, and I did have to move more over this year into that line item. If you'll remember, I was working on reallocating expenses into the proper line items. So I did take some costs out of printing, and you will not see a reduction in printing because our printing costs actually have increased as well. So it was cost neutral there, but it does result in an increase here. And then we actually had a reduction in, yes?
Senator Mazza.
Yes, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
As far as the printing costs is for the plates and stuff, are we still printing those within the departments that we have in our corrections facilities, or are we going out? So it's not a labor cost increase, it's increases from getting the raw material to print, or what? Why the increases?
No, so two things. We are printing a few more plates than normal. I don't have the exact data on how many more, but I will tell you some of this line item was allocated just to our printing costs. So our printing costs encompassed our forms, our plates, or whatnot. 2 years ago, when I took this position, I started really teasing out line items and putting them where I really thought they needed to be. For example, we had a contractor that printed our licenses. That was looped into printing costs. Everything was kind of put in that bucket. And through the last couple of years, as I get more and more into the details of the budget, I'm teasing them out and putting those lines where I think the proper places, where I think they really need to be. So this was a little bit more work on teasing out the actual plate costs and the sticker costs, moving them down into this line item. But the interesting fact is, because the cost of printing has gone up overall, you don't see a negative in the printing line, if that makes sense. And we can get into that a little more in the crosswalk.
I think so. So,
Senator,
Senator, we are still utilizing our corrections as the industry to print our plates. There are registration stickers are done through a separate contract. And so there, I believe, was a tiny increase because we renewed the agreement with corrections last year. And we've gone to more of a reflective material through EM and the product that corrections is using, but it doesn't represent this whole increase. And so that hasn't changed, and there's no discussions about outsourcing that outside of corrections at this time regarding our plates.
And the reason why I tease on this question alone is in another committee that Senator Mazza is as well, as we've seen that they're in these corrections programs, they're trying to phase them out because they're not saving, they're actually getting more expensive. But then as we come into here and we see printing costs cost increase, it looks like they're getting expensive all the way around. And so that's why I asked the question of, well, if it's getting more expensive someplace and you want to reduce, you want to get rid of that program somewhere, you should see some savings along the ways. And it doesn't seem like in the printing cost of it. And I hear that you're moving programs around and stuff, but which is the smart thing to do. So that's kind of what I'm teasing on that question a little bit, is that we're seeing elsewhere that costs are going up. So they're eliminating programs, they're talking about eliminating programs, but yet it hasn't done anything to reduce costs in that program. So that's why I've been a little long-winded on this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So with that, if we can go to the next slide, we will present to you the crosswalk in comparison from last year to this year, which is more of the detail in the summary that Terry just provided. I hope all of you can see this. And Jordan will just go to the columns. He'll sort of direct you as Terry talks about it.
Okay. I apologize that this is short. It's the only way to fit it on a page. So I am actually going to read the same chart off my computer so I can see it, if that's okay. So this is really a little more detailed to the high level we saw on the previous page. So again, the salary and wages under personal services, line 1, you do see the 1.5 increase. The fringe benefits, we have a $455,000 increase over last year. And again, health insurance and retirement contributions play the majority of that. Our contract on third-party services, here's our $645,000 increase. And again, this is maintenance and operations of the existing systems that we have in place. Moving down to the operating section under equipment, we have a modest increase of $29,000 here. The next line, IT and telecom services and equipment, that one we have a $233,000 increase. And that's largely due to the ADS increases, our partners for our IT services and our allocated fees with them. And we also have some hosting, some cloud services costs in there. Other operating services, we have a $600,000 increase, and this is where our bank costs, those bank charges for the online services and the registration fees are located. So that explains that increase. Other purchase services, we have a $230,000 increase. This is our postage costs. And then if we move down to the next line, we have a very, very modest increase of $8,000 in property and maintenance, excuse me. Other rental, we stayed flat on that one. So that one's level funded with no increase. And the rental property, we actually have a decrease here. And this year, we just reopened a new branch office in White River, this month actually, in White River Junction. And we were able to close the previous office that was a private lease with a landlord and move into AOT-owned building. So there's a modest decrease there. General operation and supplies, we have a $43,000 increase. So there's some printing costs here. And And then again, travel, we stayed level funded just because we're really not sure what the climate's going to look like, but we're hoping that we can get back to doing some of that next year. And then repair and maintenance also has a modest $1,000 increase. So again, a maintenance budget. We really, what you see is what you've got. There's not a lot of extra in here. We really look at where we're at, where things are projected to be, and budget that way.
So if I could just say to the committee, I think there's, 2 points. When, we talked about when we've presented the 500,000 increase due to the reclassifications. When I became commissioner and I sat down with the team at the time, I had asked them, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve? And, the organization, as you well know, talked about the core system and talked about the problems we have just in managing all of the IT. But they also talked to me about staffing. And DMV had not looked at their staffing positions and aligning them with the reclassification opportunities since 2013. So in 2018, we started looking at classes and working on reclassifications. And in 2018, we looked at, we did 14 reclasses. In 2019, we did a total of, we did 46 in 2018. In 2019, we did 95, and then 2020 with COVID, we did a pass. And then in 2021, we did 95. So we have looked at 155 of the positions within DMV. The importance of the reclass that just occurred, that this budget reflects, is really in our operations division and in our processing unit. And as you know, you cannot, so because we are set up in a transactional model line where you do mail processing or you just do data entry or you just, you do specific tasks, they were all different pay grades. And during COVID, especially, you can't take someone in a lower pay grade and ask them to do a higher pay grade job. Even though this team all knew what the process was to address doing beginning to end transactions, we did not have the ability to move the staff around. And so this past year, we looked at the whole enforcement division, which had not been looked at for years, as well as mail processing. And that's what this dollar reflects. And we have positioned ourselves, first of all, to be able to ask staff to perform other duties relative to their job as in processing, which has made a huge difference in helping us maintain our transaction levels. And then in the enforcement unit, we really aligned our staff with other law enforcement in other entities in state government. And I just wanted to highlight that it also on the operations side has put us in the position as we modernize with the core system to be able to align the units to support the outcome of what the system will give us in production.
Okay.
Senator Mazza?
Yes, Senator Ingalls.
Do we still have or do you, I shouldn't say still, because I don't know the answer to the question, but do we have a lot of people still working from home with DMV?
So DMV has teleworking opportunities for certain classes. It's a very small number. I think we have under 10, we have about 10 individuals that have the opportunity to telework. DMV especially in our operations side, because of the systems and the personal information and the cash, do not have the opportunity to telework. Some of our staff in the finance division can telework, a few in operations, And then in the enforcement unit, many of our officers actually have home offices, and they always have had home offices.
Right.
So they work from there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
You're
Senator
welcome.
Yep.
Thanks, Chair. Wanda, I had a budget question. I saw that there's, and then I have some other questions. There's a budget line item for 50K for vehicles. I wondered which kind of electric vehicle you're going to buy.
So first of all, that's a standard line item because we do have a rotating inventory on law enforcement. And then no, and that will include motorcycles. And so Terry, if you want to just expand on that.
Sure. So we do the Vermont Rider Education Program with the motorcycle safety and the licenses permitting. And we do purchase between 8 and 10 new motorcycles every year and rotate out. It's a 10-year rotation on those motorcycles. So that line item is primarily
for the
replacing those motorcycles. Yeah. Yep.
Could you use an electric motorcycle for those trainings?
I'm not sure that I can answer that, but
I think anything is possible, and we could look at piloting at one of our busier sites, the possibility of that, and I will have that conversation with Director Fakos.
Is it only law enforcement vehicles? Do you have any other vehicles at DMV?
No, so I misspoke. The line item Terry's talking about is the rider program. And so, but as far as we have 2 DMV fleet vehicles that we use to rotate, and we haven't replaced those in quite a while because there hasn't been that much traveling. And then we have the enforcement vehicles that are assigned.
Sure. And okay. And you get those through DMV, the BGS fleet, like everybody else. The regular cars, not the law enforcement vehicles.
So our law enforcement vehicles, we go through the AOT fleet management program, which is separate from
AOT has their own fleet.
And the 2 traveling fleet vehicles that we haven't turned in at one time came from BGS fleet, but we are utilizing the vehicles that are in the AOT fleet program. And then we also have the 2 vans. I know we call it the satellite programs. We also have 2 vehicles in that program. One travels to cover the satellite offices in the north, and we have another one assigned to the offices in the south. So the staff that serve the satellite offices either come to Montpelier or the Rutland, and then they travel together in one vehicle.
Okay.
And Jordan, you can take down this slide. We can go to the next one and keep talking. Just in
case. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, there was 3 things, one budget related and just 2 other things I wanted to remind you about, which one was that we emailed about a while ago was the inspection fees, like what the total, you had emailed me a number and I wasn't sure what it was, if it was the total that the garages make or that DMV gets. And then, so how much of all the inspection fees does DMV get and what is it per inspection? The low license plate question I had. And then I also had emailed a question about veteran plates in new metals. And I hadn't received a response on that question as well. And then I guess that's other than that, there's a person in Danville that can't get their car registered. That was
inspected. So first of all,
it's
I did not. That's right. So I believe the number on the inspection that I sent you, I don't have the email, was 3.4 million is the number that we collected. We don't, that is what we receive for the inspection stickers from the stations, which is a $6 fee per sticker. it has no relationship to what a service station is charging and what they are making. We don't track that. And then on the low plates, I just did receive some of the information that I asked for yesterday afternoon. I have not gone through that. That's why I've not forwarded that to you. And I am going to have to go in and do a search on the veterans plate, because that is, I'm unfortunately, you might be in my spam or clutter on that, and I will follow up on that one.
I can resend that one.
Thank you. So I will tell you all that Mike Smith and I have really been having difficulties with email, especially since Secretary Smith has retired. For some reason, Deputy Commissioner Smith is getting that email, but his stuff isn't moving through. So I'm not making excuses, but I am telling you, we are having some problems with that.
To Mike Smith, that was the problem. That's right.
That's right. There was one other slide in the PowerPoint. We don't have to bring it up, but we do summarize the FY23 Governor's recommended budget in section B 1100.1, and it is on the slide that the funds that were identified for public safety that are being supported in the general fund, the $20,250,000 be appropriated to DMV for the second phase of the core modernization project. And I don't know if you have any questions on that at this time.
Okay, I guess not. I think when you get the information on the fees, just give Jeannie a shout and we'll look at them anyway. If we don't do anything with them, at least we'll have some knowledge of what the fees are and when's the last time we changed them. Any other questions or comments this morning? Anything else? Wanda?
I did send out the summary of the fees, but this is something different that you want, Mr. Chair.
No, just the fees in general. I think Senator Chittenden had asked for it, and I thought that was a good idea just to see where we stand. When's the last time they were increased, and even though we don't do anything, if we do anything or not, but it'd be interesting to see, because we used to do them periodically, but just to review them.
Okay.
Looking at the revenues for like the last 10 years and how much we've drawn in, leveled off, and compare that also with the gas tax revenues.
If I put that chart together for the last few years, and you could just see that chart for everything, would that be helpful?
Yeah, if you have it, sure.
Okay, why don't I do that as far back as I can go?
Sure. Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the overview this morning. Anything else you want to add?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take the weekend off, okay?
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, thank you. Okay, Jeannie, we'll go off from live right now. And